The 2024 BRICS Summit in Kazan was more than a diplomatic gathering. It was a declaration. The world is changing, power is shifting, and a group of nations, once on the periphery, are now at the heart of this transformation. BRICS, long seen as a loose alliance, is finding its voice. And its message is clear: the old rules no longer apply. This summit, hosted by Russia, carried extra weight. The backdrop of geopolitical tensions, particularly the conflict in Ukraine, added urgency to the discussions. But it also highlighted the growing desire for alternatives to a Western-centric world. BRICS, with its emphasis on multipolarity, offered just that. The presence of so many heads of state, not just from the core members, but also numerous observer nations, underscored the significance of this gathering. This wasn't about rhetoric, it was about action. Concrete proposals were tabled, from financial mechanisms to security cooperation, demonstrating the bloc's intent to move beyond symbolism. The summit concluded with a sense of optimism, even defiance. The old order, with its institutions and norms, is being challenged. Whether BRICS succeeds in reshaping it remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: the world is watching, and the implications are profound. The most striking development in Kazan was the expansion of BRICS. Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE joined the ranks, instantly boosting the bloc's global footprint. This was not merely symbolic, it reflects a calculated move to consolidate influence in key regions. Each new member brings its own strengths. The inclusion of Saudi Arabia and the UAE, energy giants, alters the geopolitical landscape. Iran adds its considerable regional clout. Egypt, a pivotal Arab state, further solidifies BRICS's reach. This expansion serves two strategic purposes. First, it strengthens BRICS's economic muscle. The combined GDP of the expanded bloc is now a formidable force. Second, it enhances its geopolitical leverage, particularly in the global south, where resentment towards the perceived inequities of the existing order is growing. This move is a direct challenge to the exclusivity of the G7. It signals that the emerging world is no longer content with being rule-takers. They seek to be rule-makers, shaping global norms and institutions to better reflect their interests. While the geopolitical implications of BRICS's expansion dominated headlines, the summit also focused on concrete areas of cooperation. Security and economic development topped the agenda, reflecting the shared interests of member states. On the security front, there was a clear recognition that traditional threats, from terrorism to regional conflicts, require collective action. But there was also an understanding that the nature of security is evolving. Cybersecurity, for instance, featured prominently in discussions. Economic cooperation was equally important. BRICS nations, despite their diversity, face common challenges: reducing poverty, boosting trade, and ensuring financial stability. The summit saw a renewed commitment to using the bloc's collective weight to achieve these goals. Proposals to increase intra-BRICS trade, reduce reliance on the US dollar, and establish alternative financial mechanisms were discussed. These initiatives, if implemented effectively, could reshape global trade patterns and challenge the dominance of Western-controlled institutions. The subtext of the Kazan summit was unmistakable. BRICS aims to challenge the existing global order, one perceived as increasingly outdated and unfair. This challenge takes various forms, from reforming international institutions to promoting alternative models of development. The call for reform was most evident in discussions about the Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF and World Bank. BRICS nations argue that these bodies, created in the aftermath of World War II, no longer reflect the realities of the 21st century. They point to the underrepresentation of developing countries in decision-making positions and the continued dominance of Western-centric policies. The demand for a greater voice within these institutions, or the creation of alternative mechanisms, is likely to intensify in the coming years. The challenge to the old order goes beyond institutions. It is about ideas. BRICS offers a different vision of globalization, one that emphasizes multipolarity, national sovereignty, and respect for diverse development models. This vision, while still evolving, is gaining traction in many parts of the world. Section 5. India's Balancing Act. India's role within BRICS deserves special attention. As the world's largest democracy and a rising power in its own right, India brings a unique perspective to the table. Its approach is characterized by pragmatism, a commitment to strategic autonomy, and a belief in multilateralism. At the summit, India reiterated its support for a multipolar world order and the reform of global governance. However, it also emphasized the need for dialogue and cooperation to address global challenges, implicitly distancing itself from any rhetoric that could be perceived as confrontational. India's balancing act is evident in its relationships with other major powers. While engaging actively with Russia and China within the BRICS framework, India maintains close ties with the West, particularly the United States. This nuanced approach allows India to leverage its position within BRICS to advance its own interests, while also playing a constructive role in shaping the global order. Section 6. A call for reform on the world stage. The BRICS Summit was more than a gathering of nations. It was a platform for amplifying the voices of the Global South. Central to their message was the urgent need to reform international institutions. These institutions, they argue, are relics of a bygone era, ill-equipped to address the complexities of a multipolar world. The demand for reform is not new. Developing countries have long argued that institutions like the UN Security Council, with its veto-wielding permanent members, are undemocratic and unrepresentative. The BRICS Summit breathed new life into this debate. The argument is simple. The global balance of power has shifted. Emerging economies are now major drivers of global growth. Their voices deserve to be heard, not just in rhetoric, but in the structures of global governance. Whether the West, long accustomed to setting the rules, is willing to listen remains to be seen. But the message from Kazan is clear. The demand for reform is not going away. It will only grow louder. Section 7. The West takes notice. The 2024 BRICS Summit sent shockwaves through Western capitals. For too long, the West, particularly the United States and its allies, have grown accustomed to dictating the terms of global engagement. The rise of BRICS, and its growing assertiveness, represents a direct challenge to this worldview. The expansion of the bloc, the concrete proposals for economic cooperation, the calls for reform, these are not the actions of a symbolic gathering. They are the signs of a shifting geopolitical landscape, one where the West is no longer the sole architect of the global order. This newfound assertiveness from the Global South, embodied by BRICS, has sparked a mix of reactions in the West. Some view it with alarm, seeing it as a threat to their hegemony. Others recognize the need for engagement, understanding that the world has changed. The West now faces a choice: cling to the old order, risking further alienation and instability, or embrace the reality of a multipolar world and work collaboratively to address common challenges. The path chosen will have profound implications for the future. Section 8. A multipolar future? The 2024 BRICS Summit may well be remembered as a turning point in history. It marked the moment when the idea of a multipolar world order transitioned from aspiration to reality. The old certainties are gone. The rules of the game are being rewritten. The rise of BRICS does not necessarily mean the decline of the West. What it does mean is that power is being redistributed. The world is becoming more complex, more contested, and more unpredictable. In this new environment, dialogue and cooperation are not optional. They are essential. Whether BRICS can successfully navigate its internal differences and translate its ambitions into concrete actions remains to be seen. But its emergence as a force in global affairs is undeniable. The world is entering uncharted territory. The old maps no longer suffice. The 2024 BRICS Summit was a stark reminder of this reality. The future, though uncertain, is likely to be defined by the interplay between established and emerging powers. The challenge for all will be to navigate this new landscape with wisdom and foresight.